The psychological lens is all about analyzing the actions and behaviors of the characters. You have to consider why they did what they did in the novel. I chose Stephen Stosney's theory of attack, approach, and avoid. In approach motivation, you want to get more of something. In avoid motivation, you want to get away from something. In attack motivation, you want to insult, harm, or destroy something. The theme I chose was role of parents in Frankenstein. Throughout the novel, parental actions can be seen by most of the characters. These are actions that show care for another character or influence on a symbolic or actual child. This can be seen through Victor towards the creature, or Carolyn towards her children.
We accordingly brought him back to the deck and restored him to animation by rubbing him with brandy and forcing him to swallow a small quantity. This quote happens when Walton discovers Victor stranded on an iceberg at the brink of death. The approach motivation is Walton wants to get Victor back to health, and the role of the parent in this situation is Walton taking care of Victor as if he was a child. He came like a protecting spirit to the poor girl, who committed herself to his care, and after the interment of his friend, he conducted her to Geneva and placed her under the protection of a relation. 2 years after this event, Carolyn became his wife. After Buford died, Carolyn was all alone. The approach motivation that occurred was he saw that Caroline was in a bad situation and took her under his wing. The role of the parent in this quote is that when Caroline was orphaned, Alphonse took care of her like a parent. My father looked carelessly at the title page of my book and said, "Ah, Cornelius Agrippa, my dear Victor, do not waste your time upon this. It is sad trash." While stranded at an inn, Victor discovered a book by Agrippa. The attack motivation in this is Alphonse insulting the book that Victor has been reading, and the role of the parent is that Alphonse knows that alchemy is a fruitless science and wants to point Victor in another direction. My father was enraptured on finding me freed from the vexations of a criminal charge, that I was again allowed to breathe the fresh atmosphere and permitted to return to my native country. In this quote, Victor was stuck in jail after being suspected with killing Henry. The approach motivation is Alphonse wanting to get Victor back home. The role of the parent is, as a parent, Alphonse knew that Victor was innocent and was determined to free him. With his permission, my mother prevailed on her rustic guardians to yield their change to her. On a trip to Italy, Caroline saw a poor orphan who she thought was special, which turned out to be Elizabeth. The approach motivation is Caroline wants Elizabeth to have a better home, and the role of the parent is she adopts Elizabeth and becomes her favorite child. She had first yielded to our entreaties, but when she heard the life of her favorite menaced, she could no longer control her anxiety. She attended her sickbed. Her watchful attentions triumphed over the malignity of the distemper. Elizabeth was saved, but the consequences of this imprudence was fatal to her preserver. After Elizabeth got sick, Caroline could not stop herself from helping her. The approach motivation is Caroline wants to make sure that Elizabeth gets better, and the role of the parent is she takes care of Elizabeth to make sure she survives and ultimately sacrifices herself for Elizabeth. Elizabeth, my love, you must supply my place to my younger children. Carolyn is dying from scarlet fever that she got from Elizabeth in this quote, and the approach motivation here is that Elizabeth takes on the role that Caroline leaves on her deathbed. The role of parent is that Elizabeth cares for the younger children, Ernest and William, the way Carolyn did for them. I collected the instruments of life around me, that I might infuse a spark of being into the lifeless thing that lay at my feet. In this quote, Victor is about to bring life to the creature. And this quote shows approach. Victor is eager to bring the being to life, and it's approaching existence. And it also shows a role of parent, where Victor is getting ready to metaphorically give birth to this creature. I had desired it with an ardor that far exceeded moderation, but now that I had finished, the beauty of the dream vanished, and breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. In this quote, Victor has just created the monster and is standing over his accomplishment, and he's demonstrating a void motivation, as Victor realizes that he has created a monster and regrets making it. Also shows the role of parent, and immediately after having his baby, he regrets making it. He might have spoken, but I did not hear. One hand was stretched out, seemingly to detain me, but I escaped and rushed downstairs. In this quote, this is right when Victor bolts away from his creation to hide. This is obviously displaying a void mentality, where Victor quickly escaped the creature and wants to completely forget about it. Also shows role of the parent, where Victor abandons his child, making it an orphan, free to learn on its own, which it then goes and learns about violence as it is beaten up and attacked by everybody that it sees. Scoffing devil, again I do vow vengeance, again I do devote thee, miserable fiend, to torture and death. Never will I give up my search until he or I perish. This quote is right when the monster has just killed Elizabeth, essentially wiping out everybody that Victor loves. It's obviously an attack motivation. He's devoting his life to killing the creature for what it did to his family. And it also shows role of parent, where Victor is finally taking responsibility for his child in the form of hunting it down to kill it. This whole winter, instead of being spent in study, as you promised yourself, has been consumed in my sick room. This quote is from Victor to Henry, who has come to Ingolstadt to study language, but decided to attend Victor instead. This shows approach from Henry, who is wanting to get Victor healthy again. It also shows the role of the parent, because he cares for Victor like a parent, making sure he becomes well. I quickly discovered and brought home firing sufficient for the consumption of several days. In this quote, the creature notices that the DeLacy family is struggling to get by, so he uses approach motivation. The creature wants to help the DeLacy family, and getting them wood gives the creature pleasure by seeing them happy. As for the role of the parent, the creature is helping the DeLacy family survive by supplying them with wood. I rushed from my hiding place, and with extreme labor from the force of the current, saved her and dragged her to shore. In this quote, the creature wants people to see past his appearance, but is naive. So he attempts to save the girl from the river, but ends up getting shot. The creature wants to get the girl to safety, obviously, for an approach, and as a role of the parent, the creature selflessly jumps into the river to save the girl the way only a parent would. Oh, Frankenstein, generous and self-devoting being, what does it avail that I now ask thee to pardon me, I who destroyed thee by destroying all thou lovest? In this quote, Victor has just died, and the creature has made its way to his body on Walton's ship. This shows approach motivation. The creature has come forward to mourn the loss of the only person who could understand him, and also shows role of the parent, as the creature mourns over the loss of its father. Presently I found, by the frequent recurrence of some sound which the stranger repeated after them, that she was endeavoring to learn their language. The stranger learned about 20 words at the first lesson. In this quote, the creature eavesdrops on Felix talking to Safi, who is being taught French. It shows approach Felix doesn't know it, but by getting Safi to know his language, he is also helping the creature, and also shows role of the parent, where parents teach their children to speak, which is what Felix is doing without him knowing. The actions by and towards Muslims perfectly represents the creature in Frankenstein. In the wake of the Paris and San Bernardino attacks, it is easy to see all Muslim people as horrifying monsters, but they are not, just like the creature. Most Muslims are peaceful, but all we see in the news is negativity, just like the creature. In London, after November 13th, 2/3 of the Muslims polled said that they received verbal harassment similar to the abuse the creature received, like getting shot and beaten